Hi, I'm Kelly Vaughn, and this is Inside Indy. And this is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, the month of October. And we're going to celebrate, I guess that's the word we can use here, by talking to a couple of very special guests in our studio today from Sheltering Wings, which is a shelter for battered women, right? Okay, welcome to the show. We have Cassie Martin, who is the executive director for Sheltering Wings, and then we have Linda Wells, who is a residential services director there and also a survivor.
Yes, correct.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I want to begin with Cassie. If you can tell folks where you are and what you're about, your mission, purpose.
Sure. We are located in Danville, Indiana, so we're in Hendricks County. But when you think about the shelter and the families that we're serving, it's not just those in that immediate radius, but we really serve families from throughout central Indiana, throughout the state, and even outside of the state. We have families that come from all over. And so our mission can essentially be summed up in three components. The first is that we provide that emergency housing for women and children escaping domestic abuse. But then we recognize that it's not just enough to get families out of the situation, but we need to do everything possible to help them build stable and independent lives. So that goes into that second component with our life skills program. That's budgeting classes, computer classes, helping them work through some of the emotional and economic constraints that they might have, and we also have support groups that are a part of that. And then the third component is that everything that we do is through the love and compassion of Christ. And we know that there are some fantastic organizations that do really great work, but those organizations that share the love and compassion of Christ, we know that there is an even greater measure of healing, of forgiveness, of wholeness, of fullness that can come from that. And so everything that we do falls under that.
Okay. You know, and I don't know if this is the Holy Spirit speaking to me, but I was supposed to ask you this question. We have the shelters for the women and to, as you said, to escape, build, and experience the compassion of Christ. And I know you can't really answer this, but are there places for men to go to change?
There are. That's something that we talk about a lot at the shelter, and we want to be a resource for men too, because you're exactly right. There are men that experience domestic abuse as well, and so we certainly don't want to turn them away. And so while they may not stay directly at our facility, we do have the ability to make arrangements for them, and so we do provide safe housing for them. And then all of the services that are available to women and children are also available to men.
And then also, if there are men who are the abusers, there are better intervention programs available to them. A lot of times, unfortunately, it's through the court system. They've already been arrested for domestic battery or something like that. But there are different organizations out there and agencies that can help those who are really wanting to make a change.
Okay, and that's another show in of itself. So so I have to get somebody in from the court system and people who are involved in that what I call should be a movement. So I want to talk to Linda Wells, who is a survivor. She's also the residential services director at Sheltering Wings, to tell us your story, because you were part of their family, but you were also coming there at one point for their services, right?
No, actually, my abuse happened a long time ago, back in the 80s, when there really wasn't any shelters for any victim of domestic violence. And so my story's a little different sometimes than others that I hear, because I wasn't raised in a home where there was domestic violence. Maybe some dysfunction, but not violence. And so I always say I was a product of circumstance, because trauma happened in my life. My father died when I was 14, and so that kind of set me up, if you will, for making some bad choices in high school and becoming a teen mom. And through low self-esteem, I think I became a target. And so when I was about 18, 19, I met someone who, everyone said, oh, he's so fun to be around and he's charismatic. And I thought, well, why not, And so we started to date, and he was all those things. He said all the right things to me. You don't need any other friends because I'm your best friend. And as a young girl, you're like, oh, that's so sweet, So I fell right into that trap. And we ended up having a child together, and then later we got married. And then shortly after the marriage, the verbal abuse started. A lot of, you're never going to amount to anything. You're a marked woman. Who would want you? You're stupid. You dropped out of high school. I already felt that way. I already had a low self-esteem. So he just kind of built upon that. And then a little bit later, the physical abuse started. Mm-hmm. And it was, we talk a lot about walking on eggshells, and that's emotional abuse, but never knowing what mood he's going to be in when he walked through the door, or if I dressed appropriately, or if I had too much makeup on, or if food wasn't cooked just the way he wanted it, then that would give him a reason in his mind to hurt me. And when we talk about survivor mode a lot, when you're in survivor mode, you're not thinking about tomorrow. You're thinking about, how am I going to get through the day? And I remember this, and I'm ashamed to even admit it, but I wasn't a very good mother, because I can vividly remember seeing my son, who was 2, well, now he wasn't even 2 yet, walking across the living room, diaper hanging down, and I didn't care. It was like, I got to make sure I'm ready for when he walks through the door, and so just that constant being in fear of the unknown, what's going to happen. And also thinking that you're alone, that no one else is going through this. Mm-hmm. And so, I kind of fell into that trap too of, he was friends with my family, and I didn't really have the support there that I probably could have, just because he was so charismatic and friendly, and they didn't know any different. And so it kind of escalated to the point where, I was preparing to go to battle when he would come home, which isn't a safe thing to do. And I always tell the women, I don't recommend that, because to have that mindset that somebody's going to die and it's not going to be me, and so.
Honestly, that's how they think.
It is.
That's how men think. Mm-hmm. But go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. And so anyways, but then the unthinkable happened, because in my mind, I thought, well, he's only hurt me. He's not going to hurt the kids. And one day I was wrong. I went to work. I came home. He was passed out in the chair, and I heard my 4-year-old daughter crying, and I go to see what's wrong, and he had beaten her with a belt buckle. And so to my knowledge, that was the first and the last time that he ever did something like that, because immediately I had her removed from the home, but unfortunately I lost custody of her because of that, and I never got her back, and part of that was my fault, because I didn't have it in here to fight for her, because I felt like she was better off without me, and all of that. And so, but I got out of that situation shortly after that, and but it didn't really stop there, because physical abuse, and there's a whole lot more to this story, trust me, but the physical abuse, those wounds heal, unless obviously it's a horrific abuse, but it's the emotional scars that you really don't ever get over. And so for me, unfortunately, I attempted suicide several times, because I felt like, my kids are better off without me, I'm worthless, I'm all those things that I was told that I was, and everybody would just be better off without me. And then, I had decided to go to cosmetology school, and I did that, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. But you still hear those voices inside telling you that you're not worthy, that you're not good enough, that you're stupid, that and you're never going to amount to anything. And I actually graduated, was able to do that, and then I made a lot of bad choices. Alcohol and drugs was part of it, because you don't want to remember the things that you went through, and you try to escape the reality of your life. And so, I'm not justifying it by any means, but that's what I did. And
that sounds like kind of like you're snuffing out the pain too.
Yeah, exactly. And you're just creating another problem on top of a problem. But and then that just added to the depression and anxiety and all of that. And so the last time I attempted suicide, I woke up and I looked around the room in the hospital and I thought, I can't even kill myself right. That's how I felt. You know, what a joke you are. You can't even end your life right, you know, and not knowing that God had a purpose and plan for my life. And so I wasn't raised in church. I knew about God. I mean, we went to Bible school, and we were the twice-a-year churchgoers. But I went to our mailbox where I worked, like I did every day. And when I went back to work after I attempted the last time, and this mailman stops and says, "Hey, we're having revival over here at the First Church of the Nazarene. Why don't you come?" And I don't remember what I said to him, but I remember thinking, why not? I've tried everything else in my life. You know, the men, the drugs, the alcohol, you name it, and I'd done it. And so go to church, and, you know, the sky didn't fall in or anything. It was, yeah. Now, I just remember feeling safe for the first time in my life. I just felt safe. And the preacher, or the evangelist, he was talking about drunkenness and sleeping around and all these things, that's what I was about. And I got mad. I just thought, that mailman knew me, and he went and he told this preacher everything, you know.
Little did you know, we all feel that way on Sunday, right?
Yeah. So anyways, you know, he said, I want to talk to you this morning about God's forgiveness. And he said, what if I told you, of course, you know, you feel like he's saying it right to you.
Yeah.
He said, what if I told you you could leave here today totally forgiven of everything you've ever done? And of course, I'm rewinding my life in my head, and I thought, there's no way. And they had an altar call, which I didn't know what that meant, and everybody was standing up and singing, and I didn't go forward. And I just remember looking at the pew, and my knuckles were white because I was hanging on for dear life. And because I was embarrassed. I didn't want to go forward. I didn't know how to pray or any of that. And so, but I decided to go back to church that night.
Okay, good.
And I did, and he starts preaching on the same thing. And I'm like, this guy does not give up on the drunkenness and the sleeping around. And so, but then he said, and this is what got me, he said, you know, this morning we talked about God's forgiveness. Tonight I want to talk to you about your Father's love. And he said, I want you to picture your daddy. And I forgot to mention this, but my father died when I was 14. And so, anyways, I was thinking of my dad, you know. And he's like, and he's a big daddy. And then I realized he was talking about God. And his arms are wide open, and he's saying, just come to me as you are. Let me wrap my arms around you and love you for who you are.
And you're making me cry.
It gets me every time because... So I said, okay.
You said okay.
I literally ran to the altar, poured myself over, and I said, God, take me because I hate me. And he did.
We're going to take a break from crying.
I'm sorry, I tried not to.
She's got me crying. When we come back, we'll talk more about God opening his arms up and welcoming his daughter home, and the Sheltering Wings Center when we come back. We'll be back after this. And we're back with the folks from Sheltering Wings. We have Cassie Martin and Linda Wells, and Linda Wells was giving us her testimony and what she's gone through, domestic violence and her young life drinking and then coming to the Lord. And I wanted you to pick up where you left off in your testimony.
Well, like I said, you know, I asked God just to take me because I made a mess of my life trying to do it on my own, and he did. And Linda walked in one way at that church, and Linda walked out knowing that I was forgiven. I don't even know how else to explain it. I just knew I was forgiven. That was the easy part. The hard part was learning to forgive myself, which took years. But I have to share that because God transformed my life. I was the willing participant, but He changed my life, and He brought people into my life that kind of took me under their wings, and the church, did that, and they just they didn't leave me at the altar, and they helped mold me and make me, and that was my prayer. And like, Lord, make me and mold me into the woman and the mother that you called me to be. And and so that took many, many years, and I'm still a work in progress. It's far from being over, but He was able to. I became a youth pastor, years later, and how I came to Sheltering Wings, was not by accident. Somebody handed me a paper from the flyer and said, you need to apply for this job. And I read the description and I said, I'm not qualified. Because, they want a bachelor's degree and all this, and I was a hairstylist, and so, but anyways, I called and went through the interview process, and I did feel like that was my calling, because I wanted to be able to give back. I've been there. I've done that. I understand why women stay. I understand why they leave and go back so many times. I get it. And so I have a love in my heart that only can come from Him, because to be honest, I get frustrated with them because I see me. And I want so badly for them to transform their lives. And like Cassie had mentioned, we don't want to just get them safe, although that's like the most important thing, but how do we help them transform their lives to where they become self-sufficient?
Let me ask Cassie then about what do they normally need to make that transformation? What is missing?
There's so many components that a family can come in that they're missing. So it might be the economic stability of having completed their high school diploma, or maybe it's some type of secondary education or certificate, or finding a job. They might feel so dependent and reliant upon their abuser because they've stripped away all of their acts of independence, driver's license, ability to maintain a budget, all of those kinds of things. So those are more of the nuts and bolts that we really help to work on and assess where they are in life and what types of resources and tools that they need. But for the transformation part, that oftentimes goes into the support groups or the case management that they have with our staff, where they can talk one-on-one and they can really begin that journey of understanding, why he does that, what their self-value and worth is, for themselves, that they are worthy of honor, that they are worthy of respect, worthy to be loved in the way that God intended them to be loved. And just working through that process of the healing component is such an important part for the full transformation to take place.
Why does He do that?
There's so many reasons, but the underlying reason or the underlying cause of domestic abuse is control. The abuser will try to exert control in any way possible. Sometimes that manifests itself in physical abuse or in the emotional abuse by tearing a person down so that they can feel more powerful, so that they can feel more in control. Ultimately, that's what it all boils down to, is that need, that craving, that desire for control. And we oftentimes will tell victims that when they leave, that's one of the most dangerous times in their life. And that's simply because when they leave, they're taking away the object to control. They're taking away the person to control. And so then they'll react, they'll respond. And so we work with them to make sure that they're making that decision to leave in the safest way possible. So we can help them with safety planning. We can help them with safety planning as they're preparing to leave, to think through all of the things that they might need to bring with them, or the best timing of when to leave. Or there are some people that we just understand and recognize aren't ready to leave yet, or maybe right now isn't the safest time to leave. So we'll help them with safety planning so that while they're still in the home, here are some things that you can think about. Here are people that you can connect with to make sure that you stay safe. And when you do need to leave, when you are ready to leave, we can help them through that.
So, and you mentioned earlier, Linda, about that it is sometimes hard to leave. Explain to the viewers why that is, that through your experience and what you've seen at Sheltering Wings, why it takes 7 times to actually leave.
I think I mean, obviously there's various reasons, but for me, I felt alone. I thought I was the only one really going through it. I didn't even know I had a name. And the fear factor, you know, there had been so many violent altercations and physical threats, or, I'll make sure that, you lose custody of your child, which I did anyways, but, just all these things in your mind that you think and that you believe are going to happen if you leave. And I didn't have any education. I dropped out of high school. I did get my GED, but, it still didn't feel like enough. And I felt dependent upon him, and I think for me those are the reasons why I stayed. Or I would leave. Law enforcement came to our house an awful lot. And again, this is back in the 80s, and it was a family issue, and so you work it out, and that was my main thing. I wanted to work it out.
You mentioned law enforcement, and I put this on Facebook the other day. There are a lot of the police shootings, brutality against African Americans, and deservedly so, the media attention it's been getting. But what I posted was, there was a family, I don't know what state, but the guy killed 4 kids and wounded the wife. Did you see that particular story? It was, and they were older kids.
There's so many lately.
They were like,
I don't remember that.
The kids were like 17 and 16 and 2 younger kids. And I thought, where are the protesters? Where are the marchers? Because to me, if that's a white cop killing a black man because he's black, that man killed that woman and his family because she's a woman.
Right.
So where are and it happens every day, all day. But how often? I mean, even it's too often, anytime. One time's too often. But that's maybe once a week. This is every day, 50 times a day in every city in the country. So where are the marchers? That's what I want to know. Where?
Well, and that's why we think it's so important to have conversations like this. Throughout the month of October, we're talking about breaking the cycle of abuse or shattering that silence, because for too long we've been silent. For too many years, Linda can attest to this, people just considered it to be a family issue. But we need to do everything that we can to rally the community around and to say no more. We're not going to take this anymore. It's not acceptable. We're going to do everything that we can to support the people that are in the midst of these situations so that we can provide the help and the resources available. And we're going to step in. We're going to do something about it. And I think that by having these conversations, by shedding light on it, by bringing more awareness to it, that's where it begins.
Okay. Well, and two, nowadays there are so many resources. There's really no reason why someone can't seek help, because they're just, we didn't have resources back then like we do today.
And I appreciate what Sheltering Wings offers in terms of its programs. And I also think we need programs for these people who do this. It seems like, sometimes it seems like we're working to help the victims, but almost feels like the victim is, like, not that it's our fault, but we're responsible to fix it. Right. And to me, it's the men who do it who are responsible. Right. And if the audience doesn't like that I say this, so be it. And I think it's the responsibility of good men to hold the bad men responsible, because oftentimes, let's be real, men don't always listen to us. I say it goes back to the Garden of Eden, when
Thanks a lot, Eve.
Thanks a lot, Eve. I'll never listen to her again. I got it. So you're not going to listen to me, but you'll listen to another man. So it's the good men's responsibility to hold the bad men accountable. Right. And they need to get in on the fight, and they need to be leading the marches, just as the black men and the families get angry when a white cop kills the black man, because it's for that reason that that person is targeting that individual. We've got 1 minute left, and I'm going to give the floor to Cassie.
Well, I just want to say, we need to be willing to get into the mess of people's lives with one another, and to hold one another accountable, and to support and encourage one another, whatever the case may be. And so, for Domestic Violence Awareness Month, October 25th, we have a community forum. It's called Community Conversations, Shatter the Silence with Angela Kane. And that's a great place for it to start for a person. If somebody is sitting there thinking this issue is so big, it's beyond me, there's nothing really that I can do, I'm just one person, that's a good place to come and to learn more about it. And start that conversation.
And your website, Cassie?
Shelteringwings.org.
Okay, you can find out about that and so much more, and the shelter itself. And to donate, we want you to give to Sheltering Wings. You can do that as well. Cassie and Linda, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
On Inside Indy, I'm your host, Kelly Vaughn. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.